Good evening. My name is Chris, and over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to walk you through a lightweight information security risk assessment I conducted for Business Supplies, Inc. Here's where we're going. First, I'll introduce the organization and the assumptions I worked from. Then I'll take you through the 3 deliverables: an inventory of BSI's information assets ranked by criticality, a ranked list of the threats those assets face, and finally, a risk matrix that combines the two into something the executive team can actually act on. I'll close with the single most important finding, which I'll tell you now is not the one I expected to find when I started. Business Supplies is a regional office supply company founded in 1979 by 2 college friends. Over 40-some years, they've grown to 5 regional stores, a corporate headquarters that doubles as the central shipping and receiving hub, and a fleet of 20 delivery trucks. They've survived against national office supply chains on the strength of customer relationships. That's their stated strategy, and it matters for this assessment because it tells us what they can't afford to lose. In 2019, both founders retired and William Billingsley II took over. His first move was replacing the aging IT infrastructure and telephony. His second, the reason we're here, is improving information security at corporate headquarters. So let me be precise about scope and assumptions because everything downstream depends on these. The assessment covers the information assets in the headquarters data center, room 127, which is 2 racks, roughly a dozen servers, 2 network attached storage appliances, and a weekly cloud backup. 4 assumptions. 1, BSI has no formal information security policies, no security plans, and no security staff. That's stated in the case, and every score I assign reflects that baseline. 2, BSI runs an e-commerce portal, and it takes customer payments. So I've assumed card data is in play, which puts them in scope for PCI DSS. 3, the manager of IT performs the custodial role, but data owners are the business executives. 4, 1 data center, 1 site, no geographic redundancy. Part 1 is the inventory. I identified 25 information assets. A few things about how I built this list rather than what's on it. First, I separated applications from their databases. The Traverse accounting software and the accounting database are 2 different assets because they fail differently. They're owned differently, and they're recovered differently. If you lose the application, you reinstall from vendor media. If you lose the database, you may have lost your business. Second, I assign data owners at the business level, not the IT level. The manager of IT is the custodian of the accounting database. She keeps it running and backed up. But the CFO is the owner. She's the one who decides who gets access and who's accountable when it leaks. Getting this distinction right is what makes an asset inventory useful for governance instead of just being an equipment list. Third, I classified the sensitive data in each asset. Payment card information in the e-commerce and accounting databases, personally identifiable information across HR, payroll, and the customer master, employee health plan detail in the HRIS, which I've treated as EFI, and confidential corporate data almost everywhere else. The classification is doing real work later because regulated data is what turns an IT outage into a legal event. "25 assets is too many to protect all at once, so the next step is prioritization. I used a weighted factor analysis with 5 criteria. Revenue and profitability impact, weighted at 25%. How directly does losing this asset stop BSI from selling, invoicing, and collecting? Operational continuity, also 25%. What else stops working when this stops working? Active Directory generates no revenue at all, but nothing else runs without it. Data sensitivity and regulatory exposure, again, 25%. What class of data is at stake and what obligations are attached to it? Reputation and customer confidence, 15%. BSI's entire competitive position is built on trust. That's worth real weight, but it's slower acting and partly recoverable, so it doesn't get a full quarter. And recoverability difficulty, 10%. How hard is it to get this back? I gave this the smallest weight deliberately because BSI does have layered backups. Recoverability modifies the severity of a loss. It doesn't define it. Score each asset 0 to 5 against each criteria, multiply by the weight, sum, and sort. Here's what comes out on top. Number 1, at a perfect 5.0, the ERP SQL database. It holds the e-commerce order pipeline and the customer master, carries card data and personal data, and it's the only asset in the inventory that scored maximum on every single criterion. Number 2, 425, the accounting database, payroll, banking, receivables. Number 3, 4.65, the ERP application suite itself, the customer-facing portal and CRM. Number 4, 4.6, the NAS number, one backup data set. And number 5, 4.4, the corporate email database. Notice the pattern. 4 of the top 5 are data, not systems. That's the correct outcome for an asset inventory, and it's worth saying out loud to the executive audience because the instinct in most organizations is to spend the security budget on the boxes. What are we going to defend against? I built a list of 15 threats, starting from the standard categories: forces of nature, human error, software attacks, hardware and software failures, theft, sabotage, espionage, extortion, quality of service deviations, technological obsolescence, and intellectual property compromises. And then added 3 that BSI specific situation demands: insider privilege abuse, third party and supply chain compromise, and social engineering, including business email compromises. I ranked these with a different set of criteria because the question is different. For assets, I asked, how important is this? For threats, I'm asking, how dangerous is this? Likelihood of occurrence gets the heaviest weight, 30%. BSI has no detection capability whatsoever, so they'll experience the frequent threats over and over before they ever notice in a rare one. Severity of impact, 25%, so that a low frequency, high consequence event like a fire in the single data center still ranks near the top. Exposure given current controls, 20%. This is the criterion that turns a generic threat catalog into a picture of this organization: no policies, no secure staff, no patch program, and an operating environment sitting at or past end of support. It's also the only criterion that BSI can directly change. Recovery cost and difficulty, 15%. And legal and reputational consequences, 10%. Kept small on purpose because the sensitivity of the data is already weighted in table 2, and I didn't want to count it twice. The top 5 in order: software attacks at 4.75, malware, ransomware payloads, web application exploitation, information extortion, 4.7, ransomware encryptions combined with data leak extortion, human error or failure, 4.25. And I want to flag that one. It ranks third, not because BSI's people are careless, but because there is no policy telling them what careful looks like. Espionage or trespass, 4.05. And social engineering and business email compromise, 3.95. Just below the cut at 3.9, technological obsolescence, Exchange 2013 and Windows Server 2012 R2 or past support. That one didn't make the top 5, but it's the enabler for 3 of the ones that did. Part 3 brings the 2 halves together. Top 5 assets down the side, top 5 threats across the top. For each